Welcome back. So after years of debate and contention, the Expropriation Bill, now an act of course, has been signed into law. The landmark legislation was signed to address long-standing issues of land inequality and provide a framework for the expropriation of land, in some instances without compensation. Some opposition parties, including the Democratic Alliance, have vowed to take legal action against President Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's continue getting your reaction to this development. Bring in now the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa's president. That's Kgoshi Mathupa Mokoena, who joins us via our video link. Kgoshi Mokoena, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for making time to speak to us. The presidency, in their statement yesterday, says that they hope this piece of legislation will lead to equitable access to resources and address inequality. To what extent do you reckon this piece of legislation actually does that?
Thank you very much for having us. As Contralesa, we want to welcome this move by the president in signing this piece of legislation into an act. What makes us to accept it is that at least they are moving a little bit closer to what we want. However, our concern still is that many of the claimants died before they can get their land back. And that to us is not something to smile about. One other issue why we're having reservations, is that while it is an act of parliament now, it is still giving conditions such as public interest and public purpose. It's even going further to say it is negotiated by the current landowner. This legislation, it is still giving powers to the current owners of our land. And when it says there must be a just compensation, who determines the just part, As Contralesa, while accepting this, but we're saying it will take years before people can get their land back. Hence, while we are accepting it, we're having mixed feelings about it. We feel the president should have taken a step further to say this appropriation of land should have just happened, because that those who are going to resist releasing land back to their original owners. As Contralesa, we're not going to sit back and watch this while the whole 87% is not yet returned back to the original owners. We're having a mixed feelings about this, my leader.
Having had listened to you then, Kgoshi Mokoena, one has to wonder the extent to which you feel this is a real victory, or if it's more of a symbolic gesture that may perhaps on paper move us in the right direction.
This is just a gesture by the president. The question is, how are they going to implement this current legislation in making sure that those who have been possessed of their land, how are they going to get it back? If we're going to follow the same process where there will be so many conditions, as we have seen in the current legislation, these many conditions, people will end up giving up on getting their land back. We thought the president should have, we suggest the president must call some experts to gather them under one place to check the implementation of this legislation, because currently it's so difficult to implement it. The current owners are still going to enjoy all the benefits and all these things, because if I am the current owner, if you want to expropriate my land, I am the one who must call the shots to say, how much do I want? When can I release the land? As Contralesa was saying, yes, they've signed this act, but it's not assisting us in any way. Hence, the president must do something extra than what he's done now, because our people, I can tell you now, that those who are going just to look and do legislation to say, yes, it was signed, but it is not going any way further in order to address the challenges faced by owners who have been brutally removed from their land, and now they had to negotiate going back to their land. And that, I can tell you, is going to cause a problem. And even now, who is going to identify the purpose, or how is going to make sure that the just compensation, who determines the just compensation and the purpose? That's That's still a problem that's not addressed by this legislation.
Fair enough. Well, the legislation speaks about a whole host of considerations that need to be made, including the market value of this particular property, which I suppose from where I'm sitting brings us back to where the debate was even before this bill was made a law, which is around whether or not the Constitution itself, more specifically Section 25, should be amended to make provision for the expropriation of land without compensation. There was a point where the EFF offered their support to the ANC in Parliament to push this through. The ANC didn't take up that opportunity. And I wonder, as Controlesa, whether you reckon this is yet another chance for parliamentarians to revisit this conversation in order to get this this amendment through.
Ayanda, a very good question, my leader. In this legislation, the features of the property clause are still intact. Nothing has changed. The question is, if you're still having those conditions that dictates the property clause, we're back to zero. And we're saying the president must do something extraordinary. And we're calling for the president to gather experts and advise him on how to do this thing. Parliament must go back and try to amend this legislation because it is not assisting our people. I am saying, Ayanda, you can quote me on this one. People, deserving owners of the land, some of them will go out of this world without getting their land back. If we're still having these conditions that are there, as Controlesa was saying, Parliament still needs to do better than what they've done now, my leader.
There are many people, of course, pushing back against this particular act, but for completely different reasons. Organizations like the DA are worried that changing property laws would perhaps lead to uncertainty that might send jitters into the markets, investors will pull out, and ultimately no one will benefit. What's your response to that?
Unfortunately, the DA, they are just protecting the rights of those whites who are their members. There's no logic in what they're saying. Our reasons for having reservations differs completely from that of DA. The DA, they're just selfish. They're not looking at the bigger picture. What we're saying here is that there are people who have been brutally removed from their land and they were never compensated. DA's members, some of them, got the land without buying it. But now when the government wants to expropriate, they're saying no, government must buy it from them, knowing very well that they've been benefiting from those land all these years, after having not paid a cent for getting that land given to them by the apartheid government. As Controlesa was saying, their opposition is just baseless and selfish. But what we're saying, the interest of the people must come first here, as to saying, how far are we going to go in making sure our people get their land back? And we're saying with current legislation, we're not addressing that issue. Hence, we're pleading with government to go back and look into this and say, are our people going to benefit from this current legislation? And the answer is no. If it is no, then they must go back to the drawing board and make sure that they legislate accordingly to the fact that it assists our people who have been removed from their land brutally by the apartheid state, Ayanda.
All right. Kgoshi Mathupa Mokoena, for your reaction, thanks very much indeed. Kgoshi Mokoena, of course, is the president of Controlesa.